Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today and for prioritizing yourselves. My name is Cheryl Sandbergen, and I'm the founder of a local organization called Mums Gone Wild. And Mums Gone Wild is a group that we work to empower moms in our community. And normally we do this by having in-person events, adventurous events and paint nights and all kinds of things. But clearly, because of the global pandemic that's happening right now, all of that has stopped. But we're still trying to maintain an online presence, and we're still trying to bring our community together in a meaningful way for everyone. So something that we've been doing online is just checking in with each other, asking, how are you doing? Like, how are you really doing below the surface? And a post that I put up a couple of weeks ago just kind of shed light on the fact that we're all really struggling to adjust to this new normal, if you will. And it became apparent fairly quickly that the things that I was feeling inside, such as anxiety and just a lot of worry about the future, was something that a lot of other people in the group were feeling as well. And so from there, I decided that it would be of benefit for us to host one of our mental wellness seminars in a new way, and so online. And I reached out to my good friend, Tabasom, who is a clinical counselor based out of Coquitlam, BC. And she has very graciously agreed to be here today and donate her time to us and to sort of giving us some tools and tips to get through this challenging time. So before we get started, we had asked people to submit questions to our dear Tabby, sort of set up for this to keep it very casual but meaningful for the community. And we received a whole lot of input from you guys. And today, Tabasom and I are going to do our very best to address the questions that you asked. So hi, Tabasom. Thank you so much.
Cheryl, thank you so much for having me, and to all the ladies out there, thank you so much for those who sent questions. There were a whole bunch of questions sent in, and so we kind of filtered the questions to pick the ones that were most applicable to everybody. And so there are times when therapy is needed, or it's good to connect with perhaps loved ones, and questions that maybe could not be answered here. So my apologies if we can't answer all the questions, and hopefully today's session will be as helpful as possible. So, we're living in really stressful times in our world's history, and the word that comes to me all the time is chaotic, because I really don't know what's happening from day to day or hour to hour. And this kind of not knowing, it really makes our emotions come alive. And these emotions come like anxiety, anger, depression, and they're kind of like tapping me on the shoulder and saying, hey, what are you doing? What are you getting ready? What are you doing to get ready for this new normal, for this future? What's going to happen in the future? Look what's happened in the past. And so they kind of paint this horrid picture. I don't know for the rest of you, but the emotions that visit me have a crystal ball, and everything that's in it is a bit horrific. So then we have to kind of become aware of these emotions visiting us. And so I just wanted to say a few words about thoughts, if you don't mind. Just not going to be too technical, but just to explain the thoughts that visit us. We have about 60,000 thoughts a day. And research shows that about 80% of them are habitual, and they're negative. So we have about 45,000 negative thoughts a day on a good day, let alone during a pandemic. I don't even know what those numbers would. It would be nice if somebody...
Do you think it's like the curve that's like the logarithmic curve? Boom.
Flatten the curve on the thoughts visiting me, right?
Oh.
And so, thoughts can contract us or they can expand us. So they can make me a prisoner. The more inwards we go with these thoughts, it kind of might feel like we're prisoners of these thoughts, or they can expand us if we can actually start to assess the thoughts that are visiting us. And so we have to think about whose thoughts are they? Are they my thoughts? Or could they be the thoughts of entities that are visiting us? And so you may say, like, what are you talking about? What entities? Nobody's allowed into our house right now. I can't have even my mama coming over. What are you talking about? So I want to propose that, entities like depression, anger, resentment, anxiety, what if we could look at them as a visitor. Let's say this scarf, it comes and visits me. I'll put it on, but it's not a part of me. I don't need to carry it around all the time. It's something that comes to maybe shelter me, keep me warm. I have to separate me as a woman from this scarf, which is really could be like the analogy for the emotions that are visiting us right now. So, I can say I'm a woman. I'm a Persian woman. I go to bed at night. I'm a Persian woman. I wake up in the morning. I'm still a Persian woman, right? And so we may come to believe, though, that I can say I am this, but I can't say I am and label myself as anxious, or I am a depressed person, I'm an angry woman. We don't want to start applying those labels to ourselves, just to look at them as visitors. They come in to assist us, to prepare us, and then they can leave. Anxiety came into my life at an early age. We moved around a lot. So it would come in and say, hey, be careful. Don't act like this. This is weird in this culture. Or don't say this. Or change your accent so you could fit in. This is the words of anxiety, right? And then as we're getting older, as I got older, anxiety was a call to action. It's like if there were certain things that needed to get done and weren't getting done, anxiety would visit me. So we saw at the beginning of this pandemic, anxiety visited a whole bunch of people, and we ran out of toilet paper. It's like, it's not rational, right? But it comes in and it inserts these illogical thoughts into our mind, makes us think that that's who we are as individuals. And we forget the virtues that walk with us and who we are as people, what we value, what our moral standings are. And so the best way to imagine your car of life. You're driving through the highway and suddenly you go through this dark tunnel. You come to the other side and suddenly you're a backseat passenger in the car of your life. And anxiety is in the driver's seat. And maybe next to anxiety is anger. Next to you is depression. Next to you is resentment. Frustration is sitting on your lap. You don't have a seatbelt because they've taken all the seatbelts. So maybe we could think about it that way. What we want to do with today's session is, how do I stop the car of my life, get these entities out, and take control of my thoughts, take control of my emotions? Because when anxiety comes in, it opens the door to a whole bunch of other emotions. And so what we want to do is, pandemics like this don't happen all the time, right? Thank God. Thank goodness. So how do we know how to deal with it? We kind of have to have conversations like this where we're teaching and sharing each other what's helped us and what hasn't helped us. And it's visiting all of us. I talk to people day to day and they'll say, I feel so weak. I feel like a kid. I'm so frustrated. Why am I not handling this better? So I don't know if you've heard of those things in your community and people sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's just something like, I think it would be impossible to not be affected by it in some way. Mm-hmm. So whether those entities that are visiting are anxiety or depression or hopelessness or resentment or frustration, like I think that everybody's had at least something come and visit them, if not all of them at once. I know that for me, they come kind of up and down, and there are days where I feel, when you were describing the car, I almost felt like, there's days that I can kind of have this force field around my car where it's a lot easier to sort of push these things away and say, no, you're not coming in today. But there's other days where it feels like there's not even walls on the car and I'm just, running out of control in a little go-kart or something. And I do recognize that through conversations, I do think that is something that many of us, if not all of us, are experiencing right now.
Right. And that's just a beautiful way of explaining this. Perhaps we could use this analogy of a cup. Okay. Everything has a capacity. So this cup has a capacity. No matter how much I try, I can't dump the entire kettle's worth of hot water into this cup, right? It has so much. So what happens is, on days perhaps that you feel like protected and well, it's probably days you've had sunshine, sleep, good food, you've connected with people, because whenever we do that, the cup is kind of like emptying itself of all the stress that we've been taking. And then we can handle more.
Right.
Right? But when your cup is full and it's running over, there's absolutely no way you can take anymore. So it's to be aware of yourself, like in dealing with everything that's going on right now, is how am I going to empty my cup? So today, really, the slides that I will be putting up, I'm going to start the screen. Give me 1 minute. Wonderful. Do you see that?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so basically we're going to be looking at 4 different arenas that we can focus on in order to empty our cup so that we can handle more stress and build up our resistance to stress. Excuse me. So we're going to be looking at the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and the mental. So perhaps if you could start maybe with a question that somebody has sent in, and we can kind of take it from there.
Sure. So why don't we start with the physical? And I have a question that came in from a mom. Actually, I think we've combined from 2 different moms here into they're related. So how do we take care of ourselves physically during this time? Is it okay to rely on marijuana and or alcohol to get through this difficult time? What long-term effects can that approach have on mental health? And can you maybe recommend strategies for dealing with emotional eating and binge eating? Which, oh my gosh. So I am
A
on
lot,
board with this one. Yeah.
a lot for sure. So let's bring up this slide. So this one here, we're going to start with the physical. And honestly, to keep physically active is one of the most important things that you can do. You know, good habits started from the beginning of the day. Little choices make a huge difference in our day. So think about it this way. If for me to feel 100%, I need to do a lot of 1%, 1%, 1%, 1% in order to add up to that 100%. So starting our days with, intentionally saying, you know what, I'm going to be physically active. And what do I need to do to be physically active today? Even if it's a half-hour walk. Well, I actually need to focus on better nutrition. So we really, keep the fun foods, the snack foods. Some people will say, I ate bad foods. It's like, why don't we start thinking about food as food and see what fuels you at this time? So emotional eating is definitely real. And so you may want to connect with a therapist, connect with a friend. There's a lot of information online about how to move away from emotional eating, which really is a way of self-soothing. When we were children, if we did something good, if we got high marks, it was always, let's go out for ice cream. It was always, if we were sad, we were given foods. So food was used as a way to regulate emotion. So become aware of that as an adult and know that binging is perhaps just another way of you self-soothing. And so a trick that you may want to consider is actually journal what you're eating throughout the day so that you're aware of it. How much calories that you're consuming. And sometimes if I'm writing down what I'm going to be eating, I'm like, nah, I'd rather not eat this at this time. Something else you can do is rather than taking anything away, add something to your diet. So let's say I'm going to eat this bag of chips. Before you do that, have an apple, have a full glass of water, and allow it to sit, settle in your stomach for 5 to 10 minutes before you move on to eating that.
I love that tip because I feel like when we've had so much taken away from us at this point, like we've, given up sort of the visiting friends and going out and doing all these fun things, thinking about it in a way where it's adding something in rather than taking away sort of my own right to eat it. I really like that.
Exactly. So, to be physically active, we need to eat well, watch a lot of things, and the next one I'll come to the sleep as well. But one thing we can do is do the things that you actually enjoy. So music, use music in this, get the family involved. So the next one is the sleep routine. And somebody had asked, about marijuana and alcohol. So I'll share a little bit about this. It appears like marijuana and alcohol could be like a quick fix for kind of moving away from anxiety, because it's a form of self-medicating, right? So, but at this time, I mean, it's generally not advised, let alone during times of pandemic. So I'll share some information with you. Marijuana or other inhaled substances like tobacco, vaping, e-cigarettes, all of these are actually acutely dangerous right now because they affect your respiratory system. And we want to keep our respiratory system as healthy as possible because that's where COVID-19 is attacking. Another thing, when we look at alcohol affects the general health of our body. So it takes away the brake system for us to know how to control our behavior, our thoughts. So it actually brings on additional anxiety. And it kind of, by having alcohol, you're opening the door to more anxiety and stress visiting you because we're taking away our judgment, our rational thinking about how am I going to deal with this situation. So that area is being shut down, and alcohol can actually affect your sleep. So moving towards, it's an unproductive way of soothing your emotions because you're comforting yourself short term.
Right.
Long term, absolutely not. So developing a healthy sleep routine really starts, maybe if you're going to bed at 10 or 11, start thinking about it at about 7 or 8. Have the herbal tea. Maybe don't watch news late at night. Watch the temperature of your room. Walking during the day also helps you sleep better. So adopting these healthy habits affects your sleep, which is crucial at this time.
Right. So you're basically like planning your sleep from the whole day, really.
The whole day. Like something that really helps me, I'm not giving medical advice, but magnesium at night really helps. Epsom salt bath plus taking, a magnesium supplement really helps with our sleep.
So I shouldn't watch Tiger King right before bed. I did that last night, and I think Tiger King is fine. However, when you binge too many episodes in a row, and then you look at the clock, and oh my gosh, it's midnight, and my kids are going to be up at 6:30 expecting me to be teacher for the day. I really did, honestly, that is a lesson that I learned 2 nights ago, and I even messaged my friends and said, like, wow, excuse my language, but I was like, I'm a huge bitch today. And I think it's because I literally just didn't prioritize my sleep last night. And I learned that firsthand, like it is so important right now, especially when you are feeling so run down, to really give yourself the best chance of being able to feel as though you can kind of set those boundaries for yourself.
Exactly. You can't, what can you give if you're empty? If you're running on empty, there's absolutely no way you can look after yourself or your family. So look after you. It's again the mask, the oxygen mask in a plane, right?
Totally.
Look after you first. And then the final point on this slide is the deep breathing and the progressive muscle relaxation. Honestly, every therapist you will speak with, they will tell you about breathing, because when we relax our bodies, our minds follow. When our minds are active, anxiety comes and visits me, these thoughts, my body follows my mind, right? My heart starts beating, my stomach clenches. So our bodies follow our mind, but the beauty is that when we relax our bodies, our minds will follow. So for the purposes of this session, I went and created a 10-minute video. It's on YouTube, and I'll provide the link below this video. And it's a progressive muscle relaxation. And I started off with the deep breathing. So it gives you a chance, just 10 minutes a day. Most moms will tell me, I don't have time. But honestly, take that 10 minutes, because when we take these 10 minutes, steal them throughout the day. Go and hide in the bathroom, hide in the pantry, and take these 10-minute sessions, or even the first 2 or 3 minutes to just listen to the deep breathing. When you take that, it's again emptying your cup so you can take more when you go into your family.
That's something you could probably even try with your kids. I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't be
Yes.
the perfect scenario of having relaxation, but you never know. With my kids, some days I find that they do also enjoy being quiet and taking that time of introspection too.
You know, honestly, this the 10-minute clip that I've prepared, do it with your kids and see what happens. Okay?
I'll
Teach
report back.
teach them, it would be so
That's so
lovely
true.
if we could teach soothing techniques. How do I comfort me? The reason there's so much addiction really in our society is because we have no clue as a society how to soothe ourselves. So
Mm-hmm.
let's learn this, especially progressive muscle relaxation, which is one of the single most effective ways of controlling your thoughts and emotions.
I love that. Are
So
you ready to
I'm
move on to the next question? Okay. All right. So the next question that came in was, give me one second here. Sorry. How can we allow ourselves to feel our feelings but keep everything together? Oh, this is a big one.
that is a big one. So I will start with, again, let's go back to the slide. I have 3 points under there. It's limiting social media, limiting news intake, and family meetings. So, when it comes to social media, I find that whenever I'm on it, I will come across maybe postings that people have put up that are actually disturbing and traumatizing. So during a time when I'm already feeling emotionally raw, you want to avoid social media because of perhaps thoughtless posts. I don't like when I see posts about animals being hurt. So then that actually affects me. That image stays with me for the rest of the day. So limit time on social media. And if you're on social media, please consider posting things that are uplifting or maybe helpful rather than moving people towards the purposeless side of life or traumatizing them. And also, there's a bit of negative comparison that happens on social media where I'll look and say, you know what, they're handling it so much better than me. Look at all the foods they're cooking and the cookies they're baking. Why is it that I feel like I just want to be in my pajamas with my hair up in a knot and just vegging all day, right? So it makes you feel, again, emotionally raw by comparing yourselves negatively and down to other people. So limit social media as a way of like keeping the feelings. You're in charge of your emotions rather than the outside world pushing our buttons. And also, limiting news. Pick 1 or 2 news sources that you like, listen to it maybe once or twice a day, perhaps avoiding it at night. And just keep the news to listening to what you want in small increments so that you're not spending the entire day obsessing over what's the next set of news.
I remember when I very initially met with you, as you were my therapist and I was going through a tough time. One of the things that's really stuck with me that you told me was to be mindful of the time that I'm going on to social media. So I took it off my phone. You actually made me take it off my phone when I was in your office, which was like amazing because I wouldn't have done it if you didn't make me do that. But then you told me, this is so that as you log in, you're having to think about, okay, I'm mentally preparing now that I could be bombarded with anything. Because really, you're right, on social media, people can say whatever they want. And sometimes, you just can't control that. And you don't know who those messages are going to come from or what's going to sort of trigger you that day. So I just find that right now, I've kind of put that into my life, and I'm telling myself I'm taking from whatever 3 o'clock till 3:15 to read the news and to go onto social media, and then I'm going to shut it down, because if I don't have that limit, I find that I'm not perfect with this, I find that I'll go down a rabbit hole of then so much time has gone by and I've gone into looking at all these statistics or these news articles about this and that, and it's not honestly healthy. So I think that is just such a good tip at this point.
Definitely. So thank you for remembering that. That is so true, honestly, because it is so easy to go down that rabbit hole, and it's like before you know it, an hour has gone by, and we'll say, I have no time. But then I'll check my phone, like it shows me like how much time I've spent on social media. Check it. If you
Right.
3 hours, take 10 minutes of that and do the relaxation.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, be mindful, be present. I think that's one of the best ways we can get through the pandemic. The last point that I have on there is the Family Virtues Guide. So this one, it's family meetings. This is the book.
I have that. I bought it after you
I
suggested it.
I really love this book. I know it's coming through backwards, but this was written by Linda Kavalin Popov with Dan Popov. And honestly, it's one of the best books for family meetings. Make sure that family meetings are short. You know, if right now you can have them every day, 15 minutes a day. What went well in our family today? What could be improved? And then pick one of the virtues, right? So like, for instance, we can come up with courage, kindness, respect. How do we actually collaborate and cooperate together? This is a really beautiful time in our world's history to just make our world small and go back to this kind of education, so that we're also teaching kids about other people's emotions. So it's not just me controlling my emotions, it's also teaching others how to manage their emotions, because that also affects us, right? So take this time to have family meetings. And if I can also provide more information about family meetings in the link below.
That'd be great. Yeah. And I think for me, I'm just going to share, I started doing that when I first started seeing you. We've gone on and off of it, but when we started it, Sienna was a baby, and so Kayla was only 3, and it's still, even at that age, was beneficial. We just kept it really sort of basic and to the point, but I really do think that it's something that did benefit her even at that age.
Definitely. They're learning and they absorb everything that we're teaching them. So why not start at a young age? And again, it goes to self-soothing. So.
Awesome. Are you ready for the next of the 4 segments here?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to move into spiritual. And the question is, well, every time that we switch it bumps me out. Here we go. What is the best way to cope with the unknown? Not knowing if you're going to get sick and not knowing when this will end. I think also, like, another one on there is, even if this situation as we have it right now ends, you know, it could come up again. I think that's a lot of what people are starting to think about now, is how do we return to normal, and then what does that mean for the future as well?
Definitely. So, a lot of this, what we're dealing with are spiritual issues. So we can't deny that. When people come for psychotherapy is actually healing of the soul. But I don't know how many of us are actually having conversations about our souls, right? And the soul having to deal with all the emotions and thoughts that are coming in. And how do we know when this is going to end? I don't know. None of us know. We really don't know.
Tell me, Tabasom, tell me.
Right. We don't know. So then this is something that affects our souls. So honestly, as this is something that I've found helpful. Millions of people around the world find helpful, is to move towards our souls and feeding our souls. And the number one way that I've put on there is prayer. And so whether it's turning towards God, turning towards the universe, turning towards whatever you believe in, move towards that. And spend a few minutes a day on prayer and meditation. And so meditation, it's kind of like, the prayer part is having our conversation with our maker, with a higher power, and kind of letting go. I was working with a youth, and he said, when things get really bad, I let go and I let God take over my life. And things somehow work out. And that's always like stuck with me. So having these, prayers, conversations, asking for assistance. And then what I find very helpful is when they lead to acts of kindness. So it's okay to sit there and pray, but if I'm actually not putting these prayers into action, then it can be a bit meaningless, because then it's just about me. But I find that when we start coming out of me, and my life, my family, and into our communities, kind of like what you're doing, Cheryl, every single day, you're concerned about the well-being of all the women. And then I see how your generosity and your compassionate heart actually opens the door to other acts of kindness, and people are rising. So if everybody was that beacon of light, look at how many beacons of light we could have throughout all of our communities. And we all have the power to do that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah, one thing that I've really noticed that with is these kindness rocks. So people, and my family's done it as well, are painting rocks, and whatever, they could be animals or have nice sort of motivational words on them, but they're hiding them out around the community. And so my daughters and I started doing this like fairly early into the pandemic, and one day we were out, they were hiding some more of them, and they had done it a few days in a row, and they kind of got obsessed with it. But for me it was great because it was a creative activity and it got us outside, and we were hiding them along the road, and we heard a lady yelling from her window saying thank you, and we turned and looked up, and it's a stranger from her window, and she said to us, that is the best part of my day, is going for a walk and seeing all of the rocks around that park. And for me, like up until that point, I mean, I was kind of doing this for myself. I'm like, I need to entertain my kids, I want to get them outside. And I just realized, like, oh my goodness, like that lady just said that was the best part of her day. And then over time, we've noticed that the rocks have just exploded in our community. Like they're everywhere. And so it's actually like this physical just reminder of how the smallest of acts, like my 5-year-old painting a rock and putting it out, can just turn into something beautiful. And it doesn't have to be really big, large gestures. Like the really, really small things right now, I feel like are just making such a difference. I was in the grocery store, and our local grocery store, the workers actually they're behind plexiglass, and they actually also have face shields on. So when I approached the till, I was a bit taken aback. And I think that it's such a strange feeling because you feel so distanced from these people that are standing right in front of you. But I notice whenever one of us strikes up a conversation, it's just like this sort of relief that takes over both of us. And in that moment, like it's such a simple gesture just to try and have some kind of a sort of normal conversation. Like not to pretend that nothing's happening, but just that moment of connection, which I think because of the distancing, a lot of people are really sort of disconnecting. But I think we have to remind ourselves that we can still have those connections with people when we're out. And it's so important. Like that moment that I had with that cashier literally fueled me for like 3 days. I came home and I was like, oh my God, I talked to somebody that's not in my family, and they were really close to me, and it was really nice. Like it's just, clinging to those little moments.
Definitely. It's normalizing and it's validating that I'm not the only one that's going through this.
Totally.
All of this, really, the worst part I think about COVID-19 is isolation and loneliness.
Yeah.
And thinking that it's just me. But it's, when you're making connections, these soul connections where you're connecting deeply with others, it's such a good way of healing our souls. And what we were doing with your children is really moving them towards the virtues of creativity, towards beauty, and what they can do that's in their control. This question has to do, what do I do with the unknown? Well, let's focus our attention on the known, on what is in my control, how I can contribute, which is so important. And then the last point on that slide is music. Music, honestly, is a beautiful food. It's the food for our soul. So have different playlists. Do you want to feel energized? Do you want to feel happy? Do you want to exercise? Have one for feeling calm. Grab a cup of tea, sit down, I don't know, go hide in your pantry if there's too much noise, and just listen to your favorite song as a way, again, of emptying your cup.
Totally. My friend actually had this brilliant idea the other day. We both have Spotify. Actually, 3 of us have Spotify. And she created a shared playlist where we each could add in songs that sort of were relevant and meaningful to our friendship. And they're all goofy and ridiculous. But I play it now and I feel connected to them even though they're not there.
Right. And imagine listening to this music when you're walking.
Yeah.
So you're getting exercise, you're connecting with your friend, you're listening to music. All good stuff,
Totally.
Good stuff. So this would be our last slide. And I'll just go quickly through them so that you know physical, emotional, spiritual, and the final one is mental. So maybe you could share the question with for the mental side.
Sure. So the question is, what to do when all the strategies you know aren't working for anxiety and depression?
You know, when anxiety or depression they visit us, most of us want to run away from them. And this is too anxiety provoking. I don't like to feel like this. And so it's running away and ignoring it. So perhaps it's paying attention to these emotions that are visiting us. That's another strategy, to acknowledge them, but not judge them. So don't judge yourself for the fact that you're having anxiety visiting you. That's kind of like victimizing the victim. You have this problem entity visiting you, and then guilt is beating you up, or shame saying, oh my God, how can you have this much anxiety visiting you? So we want to move away from that. And a really good way of moving away from anxiety is to acknowledge it, don't judge it, and then start moving towards gratitude. Because imagine gratitude is like cold water that you're pouring on the heat, the fire of anxiety's visit. So start to think about, well, what am I grateful for? And it can be as simple as, you know what, I have clean water that I can drink. I have a roof over my head. I have a simple food on my table. My kids are healthy. I'm healthy. Or my family's healthy. Anything that you can, like anything that you can do, start moving towards gratitude. And there's one exercise you can do is for the next 3 weeks, next 21 days, start a gratitude journal where you're discovering things you're grateful for that day, 3 different things. And then the next day, it can't be the same thing you wrote the day before. Because most of us will write, faith, family, food, friends, right? I'm like, okay, I'm done. But no, it's like, oh, I'm grateful for the blue sky. I'm grateful that my coffee actually tasted pretty decent this morning. I don't know. It's like these awesome moments, write them down. And by the end of 21 days, you're going to have 63 things you could be grateful for and revisit them. So
Right.
imagine a gratitude journal that you kept during the pandemic,
That's awesome, because it would actually be different from a gratitude journal that's kept during regular life too. So it's kind of like keeping a little time capsule for yourself.
Exactly.
Almost.
Exactly. And also, teach that, something that you can teach your children as well, to move towards gratitude so that they're coming out of, the thoughts of like themselves. And again, to what am I grateful for?
Mm-hmm.
The contributions that you as parents are making.
Mm-hmm.
Make them grateful for that. Also having thoughts in your mind that perhaps assist you, that assist you with, it's like, for instance, I wrote a poem called It's Just For Now, It's Not Forever. That's on my blog if anybody wants to read it. It's having these little statements that are not, that bring you comfort, let's say. They're not anxiety provoking because I know that it's fixed. This too shall pass. If I know that this is a fixed time and it will pass, it's soothing for me. But what soothes you? Like, do you have any statements that have been helpful to you during this time?
Yeah, I think that just keeping in mind that, this too shall pass, but also that by doing what we're doing now, we're keeping ourselves safe. And
Yeah.
so this is what I need to do now to keep me and my family safe. And this is going to pass soon. And we won't have to do this soon to keep ourselves safe. But for now, that gives me comfort, just thinking, this sacrifice is gifting me something, and it's gifting, really, we're all together gifting everybody something by staying home.
Right.
And that brings me comfort.
Right. And you're doing something that's purposeful, right? So make that action of staying home and keeping yourself safe and others safe, that's actually a meaningful act rather than, oh, I'm stuck at home.
Right. Like I can't do anything. I have all these things I need to do and I can't do. Right. Yeah.
Right. But change the perspective, change how you're looking at it. And then the final point was staying connected to others. A lot of these problems of anxiety and depression, they grow in secret. So you want to make sure that if you're feeling that, connect with people you trust, share it with them. Even like, for instance, can you participate in online activities? Can you start online activities where people are talking to each other, sharing a cup of tea together online? You know, we can still have friendships online. I think just the fact that they called it social distancing at the beginning,
Yes.
I wish that said physical distancing.
Yes.
That social distancing is what's creating an issue right now.
That's why people aren't talking to the cashier right in front of them, right? Yeah.
I'm social distancing. No, we don't need to do that. Let's just do the physical. And then think about others and perhaps making cards, write letters. I would, you know, getting a letter in the mail, how wonderful would that be?
Oh my gosh, right? I don't think I've got a letter in like 5 years probably in the mail.
But imagine making the grandparents letters and artwork that's being sent in the mail, you know, and wear gloves, be clean when you're
Get your Lysol wipes out if you have any. I don't have any, so.
maintain hygiene when you're writing the letter, you know?
Yeah.
So I hope that's been helpful. And then maybe we could also talk about children.
Yeah, I think that would be really beneficial. I know a lot of people are have children who maybe are struggling with this all as well. Like children really have sacrificed too. They've sacrificed their school, their friends, their extracurriculars. And I think for a lot of them, you know, like for me personally, I've kept the amount of information I've shared with my kids to a minimum. It's a fine line to balance, I find, like explaining to them why are we doing this, but you know, I don't want to freak them out too much. So I think though that especially with people with kids that are older that do have access to the internet, tricky, you know, like I think as parents we're being pulled in all these directions, and trying to just having some tips to be able to pass along some of this wisdom to our kids would be really beneficial.
Definitely. You know, at this time, kids are going to be looking at the guardians, the parents, aunts and uncles, grandparents, just even in interactions via Zoom, day-to-day life, they're going to be looking at you to see, to kind of get the cues for how they should feel and how they should behave. So, you know, in communication, it's words, but it's also tone of voice and it's also body language, right? So, you know, in communication, it's only 7% words. Research, I mean, we got to take it with a grain of salt, but research shows that it's 7% words, 38% tone of voice, 55% body language. So if I'm sitting here like this with my eyes open and going, oh, it's going to be fine, dear. It's all fine. They know that it's not going to be fine.
Right.
That's why I wanted to discuss children at the very end, because the session today really was, how do you manage your own thoughts and emotions so that when you're around the kids, their brains have not developed to the point that ours has. You know, the prefrontal cortex, this area of the brain here where it's our adult brain, where we can actually, you know, the most logical decisions creatively, we have the resources to deal with these situations. It's not even fully developed until we're about 25. So let alone like a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, they don't have the brain power, the resources to know what to do in a situation like this. So they turn to the adults. So some of the things we can do is make the world smaller and bring in routine again. Kids love routine. Routine is kind of like that box that they feel safe in that. So get them up at the same time you would normally, get them to get dressed. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner would be at the same time. Have recess. You know, I've seen some parents making actual schedules, just a chores list as well. You know, if your house is becoming messy, why not make it a fun activity if possible and teach your kids, if you're doing family meetings, something like this, Family Virtues Guide is helpfulness, respect, kindness. You know, by them cleaning the house is an act of kindness for the family. So it has to go back to spiritual education to get us through these times. So create a routine where you do include chores. You know, what time do they play? What time do they study?
Right.
And then,
yeah, I think like the chores can also be fun. Like you can put your playlist on and the music, and I find my kids actually really enjoy being helpful. I think that because they can, once they, you know, start to do it and afterwards they realize that it just creates a more calm and sort of joyful area for us to live in.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that that's just such beneficial information. And also I think that what you were saying was just that by taking care of ourselves first, we really are giving our kids the biggest gift. And I
Definitely.
think that by, sort of implementing a few of these tools that you've given today, that's just going to ripple outwards and
Definitely.
affect them as well, right?
I hope so. And think about your children as different plants. Like I've got a bonsai tree in my office, and I also have an orchid. With my orchid, I only give it 2 pieces of ice, and it's okay once every week or once every 2 weeks. Whereas the bonsai tree needs more water. So
Right.
one of your children might need more attention, more love, more reassurance than the other one. So
Mm.
really be there to address the fears and their emotions, because kids don't know how to name the emotion. So if you don't know what's going on, what you can do is get them to check in with their body. Do they have butterflies in their stomach? Does it feel like a truck is sitting on their chest? That they will be able to tell you. So then
Mhm.
you can talk about, all right, the same strategies we talked about emotions today, move towards that, teaching them about, how to manage emotions, like you said, with music, and helping them stay connected with others. Organize FaceTime sessions with their friends, maybe Zoom. They can do online games, or any way that maybe even writing a letter to their teachers, just writing letters to the doctors who are doing all these things. I know that you go out with your kids at 7 o'clock at night and you're banging and
Wearing our onesies. Did you
where
like
you
the
want.
onesies?
Right, right. And monitor their social media and their time on TV. So if you're watching something, really be aware of who is in the room with you.
Mhm. Right.
We might be having phone calls where we're freaking out and they're listening.
Yeah.
TV shows, news, they don't know how to process it. So they want to come to rescue you. So you have to, as parents, really keep telling them that you've got this and you're in charge.
Right.
Be in the moment with them.
Mhm.
Okay.
I think that that's like honestly in the first few weeks where I was really just, struggling to process everything that was happening. I think that the number one thing that kind of allowed me to get through each day was living in the moment with my kids. Like having kids at this point in time, I feel like is such a blessing. Like it is, there are frustrating moments and it's difficult and there's challenges, but I think that there's a huge blessing in that if you live presently with your kids, that you are already creating sort of a shelter, like a bubble around yourselves. And I think that it's just, for me, it's been a blessing in a way where life is simple. And my kids will point out the butterfly flying in the backyard, or they'll sit and they'll work painting on their rocks for, hours at a time. And for me, if I can get into that state of mind, like being a kid and just focusing on what's in front of me, that's I think how I've gotten how I've survived to this point.
And really, I really hope that you can take advantage of the progressive muscle relaxation track that I've put on YouTube. Please use that, so that, because it brings you back to the moment, so that you can enjoy this time. I know it's not an enjoyable time. Honestly, it's probably the least enjoyable time in our history. But what am I going to do with it? To make
Right.
it as bearable as possible. Because who knows, maybe 2 years from now, I'll look back at this time and say, oh, I wish I'd done more when life wasn't so busy. What would
Right.
I have done with this time to, spend more time with my loved ones?
Mhm.
Letting them know how precious they are to you. Everything else, it's materialistic. It's
Mhm.
busyness.
And
So
I think no matter how much we allow ourselves to watch the media or to focus on social media and all of that, we can't really do anything about it. Like we already are doing what we can about it. We already are staying home. We are doing our part. And so beyond that, for me, I try now to think about, if I do allow myself to open up to this information, what am I going to be able to do with that? And I think that at this point in time, like that's so limited that it really is, I've really felt myself just in the last week or so, just shifting my energy to things I can actually do. Whereas that information is just not giving me, it's that having all that information isn't benefiting me or my community at all at this point.
Right. So instead of going down that rabbit hole, that beautiful example you gave earlier, imagine these as a rope that brings you out and
Right.
stay out and be
Mm-hmm.
in charge of your life and the lives of your loved ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I sincerely hope it's been helpful
It
to
has been so helpful.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you so much. And just before we wrap up, if you don't mind, I'd just like to share a couple of additional resources in case people are feeling like they need some more support system. So I personally run a group on Facebook. It's called Mother's Mental Health Support Group, and we'll link it below. Anybody can join. It's a private group. The conversation is completely confidential, and we talk about anything and everything. It's a really safe space. And in addition to that, I know our government, the BC government, has a website full of helpful links. They have some online sort of self-guided programs as well as online counseling. I'm not sure exactly how you sign up for it, but we'll link it as well. And I know that a lot of the doctors are accepting online sort of meetings at this point in time, so you don't have to go to your doctor's office. If you're struggling, you can get help from them that way. And lastly, there is BC 211, so you can dial 211 on your phone, and they will connect you to all kinds of different supports, different community organizations, and lots of them are free. And you can also go to the website. It's bc211.ca, I think. So we'll link all of that below as well. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who tuned in and watched Tabasom and I. I hope that you guys take these tools and that they provide you with benefit and hope and comfort. And I just want to say that we love you guys all. And if you need anything, please reach out privately.
Thank you. And that's the thing. There are most therapists now, because we can't offer in session, in individual sessions in person, everything, a lot of therapists are offering it online. So another resource is counsellingbc.com, and they have a list of all the therapists around BC. So that one, we'll put that on the website.
And I guess the benefit there is they don't even have to be local. You don't have to wait to get into the local one.
You can go anywhere in the world.
That's great.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for having me. I really appreciate it.
We appreciate you too, Tabasom. Take care.
For sure. You too.
Bye.